Welcome to the Shabby and Man podcast. We are partners, parents, podcasters, broadcasters,
and everything else in between. And what a week it's been, or what a month it's been of sports. We've had football, we've had tennis, we've had cricket, we've at the moment got the motor racing, we've got the British Grand Prix happening right now, we've got golf, the Open is happening in Sandwich, which is in Kent, just not too far from us.
Is that where the Earl of Sandwich came from?
And I'm not sure. Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And we've got the Olympics not long now, about 2 more weeks to go before the Olympics kick off in
I'm very confused about that one, because today I heard that already there's been one case.
Yep.
It hasn't been started yet.
Yeah. And people are already talking about what a different experience it's going to be, because there's going to be no audience, you'll have to put your own medals on or something like that.
It must be really, really strange with no spectators.
Yeah.
When you just dive into the pool or do the 100 meters, it'll be a weird feeling.
And not just that, when you win, when you're on the podium, you're supposed to put the medal around your neck yourself. That kind of takes away a bit of the fun as well. And apparently even before and after the sporting events, they will have to be confined to the Games Village, as it is called. So no sightseeing, no having fun for the journalists. So very, very strange experience. But then these are strange times.
Who cares about the journalists? We're talking about the actual athletes who just spent 4 hard years
training for
Make
that 5.
Yeah, 5 years.
Yes.
Why 5 years?
Because it didn't happen last year, remember? The same reason that Euro 2020 is taking place in 2021.
Oh, was meant to happen last year?
Yes. Well, you forgot about that conveniently.
Well observed.
Let's talk about the biggest sporting event that the world enjoyed. Well, some people did enjoy it.
Europe enjoyed.
Yes, Europe enjoyed. But it was equally talked about in India and elsewhere in the world, I think.
I think South America had their own cup.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
Yeah.
Finally, Messi won a cup. That's a different story altogether. So Argentina won something there. So let's talk about the Euro. Shall we specifically talk about the finals?
Yeah, let's talk about the finals. What's your take on it?
Well, जो हमारे सब श्रोताओं को बता दें कि in case you don't know, that England lost on penalties to Italy.
Yeah. It didn't come home. It jumped on the Eurostar. It crossed the North Sea and went straight to Rome.
It went to, it's not coming home.
Yeah.
It's gone to Rome.
Yeah.
Did you see all those hashtags and all?
Because oh my God.
We've spent, I think all we heard on the radio and wherever you went was, it's coming home.
It's coming home, yeah.
And, well, it didn't.
It was meant to come home after 55 years. That's what made it so poignant, that for 55 years, England, as a footballing nation where it all started and which has one of the most coveted, most famous clubs in the whole world, has never been in a position to win anything substantial in football for the last 55 years.
It has many coveted clubs.
No, as in, football league. Many clubs, but league, right? Anybody in football wants to come and play in the English league. This was the first time in 55 years that they had a chance of winning a trophy.
First time in 55 years they got to the final.
The final, of course, the last time it was the World Cup.
Is such a big thing.
Yeah, this is also something people are pointing out. The last time it was the World Cup, this time it's the Euros. Nonetheless, in 55 years, the first time in a final, and it just...
You know, losing on penalties is always heartbreaking, no matter which team you are.
Yeah.
I know if you're neutral, it's great fun to watch.
Yeah.
But if it's your team playing and you lose on penalties, you've just gone to the edge. You've nearly done it.
It's a matter of luck then. You know, skill is out of the window because...
well, I mean, he's a good goalkeeper. Let's not forget it. The Italian goalkeeper is brilliant.
Yeah. And
he's also incredibly tall.
Yeah. That helps, I suppose, if you're a goalkeeper. And this time, the experience was different for 2 reasons, I felt, for me. A, because obviously London was the scene of the action, just around the corner from us, Wembley Arch. Wembley, that's where everything was happening. And because of this 55-year curse, the entire nation dropped everything and was behind the team. And B, because we've got 2 teenage boys now, especially the older one who's 16, he's very much into football.
He took it to heart.
He took it to heart. And one of his heroes from Arsenal, Saka, was part of the final and became a big story later.
Is the guy who missed the final penalty.
Yeah. So I was having many conversations with him because I remember he had the pleasure of going and watching it on the big screen with his friends. Then they went out to central London a couple of times. They really followed the English team all the way through, right?
And that was quite scary in itself, because if you looked at the scenes of violence, hooligans, you know,
absolute carnage.
I think the British fans got a very bad name that day.
Yeah.
Which is last Sunday only.
Which was last Sunday, yeah. And, you know, I was talking to him and he said that it's while of course, racism became the big story the next morning, right? And you were telling me that as soon as those 3 footballers who missed the penalties, as soon as that happened, you knew that people were going to pick on their race,
yeah, because
right?
As you pointed out, that all 3 just happened to be
black. And while I think the entire nation stood behind these 3 lions, there were so many hashtags, so many people saying that, it's completely the wrong attitude to take, and this is not about race. This is about these boys giving us that feel-good factor in a year that has just seen so much heartbreak already. We're still coming out of the pandemic, and we're still grappling with the after effects. They brought the nation together. They got us together. They got us something to sing and dance about.
But saying that, Italy has had just as bad a pandemic.
That's true. But, my son, having a conversation with him, he said something quite interesting. He said that, sadly, we live in a world where you can't separate race from sporting glory, because he said that if you were to criticize a footballer on their game, regardless of the color of their skin, now what happens is ethnicity and race becomes the big story. You can't say something, you can't criticize someone without highlighting, especially if they are non-whites, right?
I know where you're going with this, because he told me the same thing. I think that when he said it,
it was disappointing.
He was really disappointed and hurt that you talk about Marcus Rashford.
Yeah.
He said that Marcus Rashford should have scored.
Should have scored because, they get paid so much, they practice day in, day out. And what's worse, or from a football
he
perspective,
sent the goalkeeper in the wrong direction.
He sent the goalkeeper in the wrong
just
direction.
Hit the post. I said
but
to him,
it's pressure.
I said these things happen.
Yeah, these things happen, of course.
And I said, well, don't forget what a great guy Marcus Rashford is. What he's done for kids.
Yeah.
Free school meals.
Absolutely.
But Elder said, no, don't confuse the two issues.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy, but we're talking about how badly he played. And he says many players played badly on that day.
Yeah.
I don't want to say this, but he said that the England captain was hardly seen in the second half.
Yeah, well, there you go. So the analysis led to so many conversations. People saying, as you're saying, that these kids were brought in at the last minute. They didn't get a chance to touch the ball or warm up, and they were thrown into the deep end. Don't forget, taking a penalty is hard enough, but you have 55 years of disappointment and the expectation of 60 million people tied to your feet when these kids took the penalty. Not defending them, but that's the way it panned out. And sadly, such a great sporting event ending on such a sour note, because
I think it got overshadowed by the racism.
Yeah,
and I think the story went around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the face of England the world saw.
No, but they are saying that a lot of the tweets that came in were coming in from abroad. But that doesn't mean that they're all coming from abroad. Many are coming from their own fans.
Yeah. I've got a few friends who were there at Wembley on the day of the final, and they said that we've never been in this kind of an atmosphere. While we were hoping that it would be an unforgettable evening for all the right reasons, but sadly, it was also a day we saw so much, again, fueled by alcohol, because everybody had started drinking.
Broken glass.
Yeah. People storming into Wembley, those who didn't have tickets.
There were so many people who went in who didn't have tickets.
Yeah. It was mayhem. But, let's put it behind us. It's been a week since all that happened, and Qatar is now what people are trying to focus on.
Here it comes. This time it's happening in November, December, because it's so hot in the summer months there. Well, it's hot everywhere, but especially there.
Yeah.
And they're doing it, I think, in November, in middle of November next year.
I also
so that'll be exciting.
And I also feel that the young fans, like, our sons, I feel that they'll get over it much sooner, because they haven't seen the 55 years of hurt, right? They've only been following the team seriously for the last 5-6 years.
About it.
They've only heard about it.
Thanks to that song that keeps playing repetitively.
Yeah. It's coming home. So I think, just to take something positive from it, people are focusing on the fact that it's a young team, which means that they've got their moments of glory ahead of them if they play well.
It's a very young team.
Yeah.
Look at the 3 guys who missed penalties.
That's what we're calling them, kids.
19, 21 and 23?
Yeah.
So it's young.
Let's talk about something else that happened on the same day. Djokovic making history in Wimbledon. Now,
I thought you were going to say that we're watching Wimbledon and there's David Beckham and Tom Cruise.
Yep.
And then you're watching the football in the evening.
Yeah.
And there's David Beckham and Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
What's going on?
But it's also very strange.
Do you remember? They did a quick kapra change, but
no, that they did, and they must have, I'm sure, had chauffeur-driven cars that either took them.
Beckham is wearing a white jacket for Wimbledon and a dark blue jacket for
I'm sure he can afford to have 2 suits. I'm sure he has more than one. So he did a quick.
He's better off than me then.
Yes, in more ways than one. But do you remember how strange it was when we were watching them at Wimbledon, our son said, "Oh, we know that Tom Cruise is going to be there in Wembley this evening as well because they've just announced the guest list." Yeah. I thought that the camera just happened to pan on places where they know VIPs would be sitting.
No. There's like a royal box guest list.
Which is made public in advance.
Yeah, because apart from all the dignitaries, there was Tom Cruise, Kate Moss, I think. The names had come beforehand.
You're talking about Wimbledon here?
No, about the
World Cup.
Yeah, not the World Cup, the Euros.
The Euros, sorry. You had dignitaries from Italy as well, of course.
That's what they announced before. They don't announce the Wimbledon one.
Wimbledon one, they don't, of course. And Wimbledon, of course, we saw Priyanka Chopra in the royal box. She was sitting behind...
some legends. Some tennis legends. I think she was behind...
Billie Jean King.
Billie Jean King and all, yeah.
And, of course, Prince William and Kate. So that was Wimbledon. And for the first time, there was a Bengali kid again. 17-year-old Sameer Banerjee.
Now, I love the way that you claim him as a Bengali kid.
His name is Banerjee. There's no escaping the Bengali roots.
He's American.
Yes.
He's never been to India.
Oh, he's been to India a few times, I'm sure.
No, I think he said that he hasn't been there.
Okay.
First point.
Yeah.
Second point, I believe in India in the newspapers, they're haggling and fighting over whether he's from Hyderabad or he's from Assam or he's from Bengal.
I believe he's a Bengali from Assam, specifically from a place called Digboi, which is where one of my very close friends comes from as well. That is where his grandfather was. So
you have this affiliation towards him because one of your friends lives where his grandfather came from?
No, that's a double affiliation because A, because he's a Bengali, I'm Bengali as well, and B, because his grandfather came from a place where my friend comes from as well. So Sameer Banerjee won the boys singles trophy at Wimbledon, and obviously they're saying that is he one to watch out for because that's where they graduate. The next one is playing for the men's singles.
You know what really blew my mind? He's 17.
Yeah.
And he's just a couple of months older than our eldest.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And there's something about Wimbledon that happened this year for the first time, at least to our knowledge, that's never happened before. Which is that the story came out a few days later that they were investigating 2 matches. Now, it's gone very quiet now, so we don't know whether the investigation is closed or whether it's ongoing.
You mean about match fixing?
Match fixing allegations at Wimbledon is very
Exactly,
strange.
I was going to say, that's a very cricket thing. Kind of thing.
Yeah. And also, I hate to say this, but it's something that was prevalent in the Asian subcontinent, right?
And it's done here with horse racing as well.
Really?
Yeah, it's around the world.
But it's hard to do, right? Because here you've got authorities who are keeping an eye on. I believe that's how they broke the story, saying that 2 matches where bettings were suspiciously, they suddenly changed at the last minute. You know, they've not told us which 2 matches they are.
Suspicious betting activity. So that means there's somebody who's keeping an eye on these things, right? Just to make sure that everything is fair and square. So that's Wimbledon's squeaky clean image tarnished just a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of thing you see in movies that, especially in boxing and all, they're going to take a hit in the 3rd round.
Yeah. But there was another non-story at Wimbledon. You told me about it. That some
total non-story.
Asian lady who was complaining about the fact that when she
put a post up on
her
Instagram, which the Asian media here
picked up on,
where she said that while sitting in Wimbledon, she ate a thepla, and then the person next to her stared at her or something, and whatever. So she put it on Instagram, and on Instagram she got some comments saying, "We really shouldn't eat smelly food at Wimbledon then."
And while there were just as many people saying that if others can eat their sandwich, why can't we eat our thepla? And anyway, that's completely a non-story. So that's Wimbledon and Euros both on the same day. Now, let's talk about some of the other stuff. Cricket
was a huge thing because these poor players had to come to England. They had to come to Southampton.
Yeah.
This is the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And they had to isolate for 10 days, 14 days.
Oh, you say poor players. Come on. Virat and Anushka have been posting selfie after selfie while they were in quarantine. This is my breakfast. This is my workout. This is the back of my beautiful daughter's head. They've been doing all of that.
Oh, have they?
Yes.
Well, it was like the ultimate test match to find out the world's greatest test team, whatever, against India and New Zealand. And New Zealand won.
Yeah. Now, the first day was a complete washout. They didn't have any play. 2-3 days. So they had an extra day.
Yeah.
And it was it a bit of a nail-biting finish because India had a chance right till the end.
Yeah,
and it was only on the last day that
I didn't really follow it. So it didn't really get much publicity here.
Yeah. But you're telling me that England are playing Pakistan right now.
They are.
Right?
Yeah. So, yesterday, Pakistan finally won their first match. They won T20. So that was quite good for Pakistan.
Yeah.
And then I think England is playing India soon here. The players are still here, I think. Oh, that's another thing. There was a photograph of Rishabh Pant at Wembley for the semi-finals. And now, 2-3 days ago, we heard that he's got COVID.
Oh, gosh.
So the Indian team now has to isolate, and I don't know what the stories are, what's going to happen.
But then also saying
that... It's a whole new ball game.
We are also recording on a weekend which comes just before a historic Monday, where all COVID restrictions would be lifted. Nobody would need to isolate unless they have symptoms themselves. And a lot is changing dramatically. So
yeah, I think that's for another podcast. Where do you stand with some shops saying, a very famous bookshop is saying that we want you to wear masks.
Yeah.
While another very famous coffee shop is saying that we don't want you to wear masks.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. Did you say there's a bit of golf happening today?
Yeah, that's what I said. It's in St. George's is in Kent. Yeah. And let's face it, you and me don't follow golf.
No.
But it's the Open. The European
I only
Open.
know the Masters.
That's in America. Well, I don't know.
Augusta.
Sometimes here, sometimes it's there. Sometimes it's up in Scotland, isn't it?
St. Andrews, right?
Yeah.
And then you said the Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix.
Yeah. Is
it the British Grand Prix or the English Grand Prix?
It's the British Grand Prix.
It is the British Grand Prix. Okay.
It's in Silverstone, and you know how much I love Lewis Hamilton, because I feel that he stands up. He's really made a difference to the sport. He's actually standing up for Black Power. He's trying to make a change. He's commissioned a report recently. I think it said like 1% of people who work in motorsport are black or ethnic minorities. So,
but that is because it is a rich man's sport, isn't it?
So is tennis. Look at Serena Williams and all. They managed to do it. Yeah. So is golf. Look at Tiger Woods.
No, but this is even more than that, because let's face it, you're not going to have access to a Formula 1 car to practice
when I say look at them, I mean there's only one or two that kind of do it. But this year, right now, Lewis Hamilton is behind, I think, Max Verstappen. So it's going to be very exciting tonight to see who makes it.
Yeah. But you're saying that, since footballers started taking the knee as well, and since this whole thing became quite prominent and people started talking about race and how, it affects your standing in sport and in life, in your job and everything else, this is when he's become quite vocal, because Lewis Hamilton has been at the top of his game for the last, decade?
I know, but
But it's only now
I think since that George Floyd incident, he has become very vocal, and all power to him. Of course, taking the knee is a very controversial subject here at the moment. Many people, I personally think it just means that you're against racism.
Yeah, and that you're showing your solidarity.
But there are many people who think that it's you're supporting the Black Power movement of America, who want to defund the police. So there's
a political spin on that.
Yeah, so it's very complex. Maybe we'll do a podcast on that as well.
Now, we've spoken about the Olympics already. I'm sure in 2 weeks' time when we do our next podcast.
Sorry, what is this podcast about? Sports?
Yes, it is about sport. So we've spoken about the Olympics, right? Yeah. So
have you, just out of interest, have you ever met any sporting celebs?
Not lately, but when I was growing up, yes. I've told you this many times, that...
like when I say sporting celebs, I don't mean just sports. I mean your idols, your heroes.
My idols. I have, as it happens. I remember writing a letter to Sunil Gavaskar when I was at university. And he actually replied to me, and that letter came to me to my Miranda House hostel address. I still remember
Just imagine, what was it? Dear Sunil, sir,
no,
I am your biggest fan. Yeah, I'm your biggest fan. No. Here's some of my blood.
No, of course not. I must have written a very cheeky and witty, because that's why I liked him. Out of all the cricketers, I liked him the best, because he was always, he had a cheeky comment to make, even when India were down in the dumps and they hadn't done too well. So he replied to me, and he said to me, right, you're at university in Delhi. The Indian cricket team is going to be at the Taj Hotel on such and such day. We are being given a reception by so and so. Why don't you come and see me? So I remember going with a friend of mine, and we had the best time ever. These are pre-selfie days, naturally. So we took a photograph, and I'm sure that framed photograph autographed by Gavaskar. Obviously, I took a photograph of him, which he autographed then and there, and then we took photographs on the camera. All of that is somewhere in my mom and dad's house still remember. But that was my first brush with actually meeting a world-famous sports star who I absolutely idolized. Then there was Imran Khan. I was equally into Imran Khan.
I've heard so many of the stories of how obsessed you. Do you have scrapbooks?
I had scrapbooks, and then I remember...
This is what, the late 80s?
This is the late 80s, when Imran Khan was a national heartthrob in India. This was the time before politics made it virtually impossible for either Indian players to go to Pakistan or Pakistan to come to India. So I remember in the 80s, Pakistan must have come at least 2 or 3 times to India during my growing up years.
Didn't he do that famous ad?
He did an ad for Synthol.
It was soap, wasn't it?
It was a soap called Synthol,
yeah.
because, Parmeshwar Godrej, Mrs. Godrej.
Good friend of his.
And I think they say that in the history of their campaigns, and they've had Bollywood stars and you name it as their ambassadors, no campaign has been as successful as that Synthol campaign. We had to send in 3 Synthol rappers to get I still remember, a red t-shirt with Imran Khan's it's almost like a sketch.
He's lecturing at the back.
A sketch and an autograph printed on the back and Synthol written on the front. And my sister and I, we both got ours individually. So we were so thrilled. But that's not what I want to talk about. I remember this was when my father was posted in Kanpur. And this is probably the first time my father actually used his official powers to do something for me, because I was such a big fan. My father was the Postmaster General.
I thought your father was the secretary of the post. It would be easy for him.
Yeah, he retired as the head of the Indian Post Office, but back then, I'm talking about 20 years before he retired. We were in Kanpur then, and the Pakistan cricket team was playing in Lucknow, which is not too far from Lucknow, Gorakhpur, all of that as well, right? So they were playing in Lucknow, and this was the year of my A-levels. So I couldn't take time off and go and watch the match or whatever, and Imran Khan's autobiography had come out 6 months ago. So I had the autobiography.
Class 12.
Class 12, board exams. So I had his autobiography. My dad sent someone from Kanpur who went to Lucknow, who went to the stadium, who went to the players' dressing room. Naturally, you have to have a bit of influence, right, to have access to all these things. Went to the players' dressing room. Imran Khan autographed my book saying, "To Shabnam, with best wishes, Imran," and the book came back to me. So always remember that story, and I'm so chuffed. I remember.
So it's like your own personal post office, basically.
It's my personal. I don't think my dad's ever done it for anything else, but I do remember that. And there was another famous incident that happened here where you had to enlighten me on what I just missed. I remember
when we're talking about?
This is when we just come here, and I had just started broadcasting, and we used to do these OBs.
The crisp campaign.
The crisp campaign.
How can I forget that? That still makes me laugh.
We used to do these outdoor broadcasts, right?
Yes,
and I'd just come here, and football isn't one of my passions. It's not a sport I follow.
A very famous packet of crisps in this country.
Yeah. But are you not allowed to take their name?
No, of course. It's called Walker's Crisps.
Yeah.
It was being fronted, it still is actually, by Gary Lineker.
And I think that was the year they signed Gary Lineker on. Him and Meera Syal and
lots of people.
Celebrities from different walks of life.
So when you were standing with your microphone in some shop, you weren't sure who was going to turn up.
We were doing an outdoor broadcast for Walkers, and we were told that a celebrity would turn up. And after a while, there I was, and somebody just, walked up to me, an elderly, very sweet-looking smart elderly gentleman in a suit, linen suit. I remember it was very hot that day. And then I was asked to interview him, and I interviewed him saying that, okay, sir, because he came as the representative for Walkers. I said, so there must be a specific campaign that we were talking about. So we had a chit chat, we had a 5-6 minute live interview, and then as he was walking away, I saw there were loads of people in that supermarket, including my co-presenters from here, who made a beeline for him, and they wanted to take photographs with him, they wanted to take his autograph, and I had no idea who he was. It was only when I came home and I said to you, listen, have you heard of someone called Jeff Hurst?
And I had to say, Sir Jeff Hurst, who scored the hat-trick, the World Cup 1966. What do you mean? Have you got a photo? Where's the selfie?
Yeah.
And nothing.
Autograph, not even an autograph. And ironically, I was the one who interviewed him on radio. I could have had as many photos and as many autographs as I wanted, but I had absolutely no idea who he was. Again, coming back to the Euros, that is why it was such an iconic moment, because the last time England won was in 1966. Any and every player in that World Cup winning squad is a legend in this country, and Sir Jeff Hurst happened to be, at the time, he was one of the 3 footballers who were alive at the time, right?
Sadly, many have passed away.
Many have passed away. But at the time, he was only one of the 3.
Really?
So, yeah. There were 2 other footballers who you told me were still alive. So he was only part of... That's 20 years ago. I'm talking about nearly 20 years ago.
Still are, I think. Bobby Charlton. I don't know who the third one was.
So that was that. That was my brush with a super celebrity in this country without even knowing.
What's strange is that you did this crisp thing here, and you just come from India, where you were the crisp girl in India. Weren't you Uncle Chips?
Bole Mere Lips, yeah.
Bole Mere Lips, Uncle Chips.
You know what this incident reminds me of?
What?
It's like you and I last year, right after lockdown, going and watching a film with Tom Cruise without even knowing we were watching it with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
It's exactly like that. What about you? You tell me about how many of your stars you've met.
The only one who well, I was starstruck. I've mentioned this story many times before. It's like 30 years later. I was walking down the street in near Sloane Square, some posh place I was walking down. And I saw this guy, and I did an about turn. And like a stalker, I followed him because I realized who it was. And it was a guy called Daley Thompson. And as a kid,
even I know him.
I used to have his poster, Decathlon. He used to do a Lucozade ad. And, you know, I think my legs turned to, because I really used to, as a 10-year-old or something, really used to idolize him. So that was one big one. And I remember in school once, we had a school fete and we had a celeb come in. And he was going to charge 5p or 10p per autograph, which was going to some charity. And he was a boxer. Have you ever heard of Henry Cooper?
No.
Well, he was famous when he was signing my autographs and all. He was famous for doing the Brute ad, aftershave and all. But I think he's a very famous boxer. He was. I think his biggest claim to fame was that in 1966 he decked Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali went flying down, but then got up again and beat Henry Cooper,
flattened him.
But he was a great boxer. So I remember getting an autograph with him, and my mom probably taking a photograph. You know,
you probably, let me jog your memory a little bit here. You've probably forgotten that your days in Delhi where maybe because you were part of the invited guest list,
like that.
You had a brush with quite a few stars and royalty at the Jaipur Polo Ground.
You're right. I used to go to the Jaipur Polo Ground, and you're talking about...
How did you get on the guest list is what I want to know.
You know, it's called the Zeitgeist at the time. I was on radio, I was writing columns.
Yeah.
You just get invited to places. And you're right. Always
Mansoor Ali Khan,
Pataudi and Shamina Tagore were always like the chief guests, always there.
Yeah,
and
because polo is a royal sport in India. It was, it still is. It's heavily patronized by the royals, and because of the association,
Shamina Tagore.
Because of the association with Mansoor Ali Khan, Pataudi, and Sharmila Tagore, who were virtually there at every polo event, you'd often have. You didn't have Kareena on the scene then, but you would have Saif Ali Khan.
So I see them all the time.
And the models, all the models from Delhi.
And a lot of sports stars you'd bump into all the time. So I remember everywhere I'd go, I'd see Kapil Dev and all. The Delhi-based stars. So I saw them. But I'm talking about ones that when I was a kid who I was really starstruck by. You know.
And especially I think in London, I know that very often, not talking specifically about sports here, but very often we see people, for instance, I remember once seeing Vanessa Redgrave walk out of the stage door in the afternoon, possibly after rehearsals, because I know that people stand at the stage door after a performance, you know, specifically for photographs and autographs. But this was in the afternoon, so she must have been there.
Vanessa Redgrave fan?
I wasn't a super fan, but of course I knew who she was. But here people, I would say, are very respectful. It is very unlike an Englishman to actually go and make a fuss or go and make or harass a celebrity in public by asking for autographs and photographs. They wouldn't do that. Even if you knew who that person is, and no matter how famous they are, they just let you be, which is why I think people love being in London more than they love being in LA.
I'm just thinking back to She Must Have Hated Me. Remember once when we got a seat in front of Judi Dench?
Oh, yes.
And I spent all the time just turning around.
Yeah, Judi Dench and her husband, they were in the seats right behind us. This was a press night for a fantastic Shakespearean play, which was Shakespeare summed up in 3 hours or 2 hours. Remember, it went through all of Shakespeare's
I remember it very clearly, but I said we kept turning around. Well, I kept turning around to see her reactions every time. Yeah. It must have really annoyed everyone else.
Yeah. No, because it's not very often that you're seated one row ahead of Judi Dench. I'm sure
I don't know why we're talking about Judi Dench and Vanessa Redgrave. You've taken it away from sports.
Yeah, but I think we've spoken about sports enough. But, you know, let's also talk about the fact that Bollywood has somehow ended up as the home of sporting biopics in India. You know, especially in the last decade, if you look at the sporting biopics coming out of India, coming out of Bollywood, we've had films on MS Dhoni, on Mohammad Azharuddin, Mary Kom, Priyanka Chopra playing the boxer Mary Kom, Bhag Milkha Bhag. Then Saina Nehwal's biopic came out on digital recently.
I've heard in the last week that Ranbir Kapoor might be playing Saurav Ganguly. Dada.
And we already know that Taapsee Pannu is playing Mithali Raj. You know,
and she's a great cricketer.
Yeah, but again, sadly, people don't know much about her because she's the women's cricket captain.
She is.
They have achieved, I think, far more than the men's team have in the last few decades, but last few years.
Which brings me back to Djokovic. You know, when he won Wimbledon, he's won 20 Grand Slams, which is equal to
Nadal and
Federer. But I wonder, Serena Williams, Steffi Graf, they've probably got more,
overall, you mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Must check that out.
So yeah, loads of, why sport is important, why sporting heroes become universally worshipped and seen as the pinnacle of
why? Because they inspire
glory.
people.
They inspire people. It's all about blood, sweat and tears. It's all about falling down and getting up again. And of course, not to mention Kabir Khan's 83, the film, which is specifically looking at India's moment of glory at Lord's here, winning the World Cup for the first time, Cricket World Cup.
Sports actually unites a country together.
Yeah, it does.
Doesn't matter what you think.
Yeah, that is why the racism...
Everyone is on the same page for debate.
That is why the allegations of racism hurt even more, because it brought the nation together. We're talking about Euros here.
It definitely did here.
Yeah. And not to forget some brilliant documentaries we've seen on Senna and Maradona, and
both by Asif Kapadia, as it happens.
So naturally, Indians, I think, have a special place in their heart for sporting heroes. That's what it says. But, well, that's it. I think we've spoken for a very long time this time. That's how much we love our sport, and we've been consumed by it in the last...
Did you want to mention something about Judi Dench or not?
I did. I was just thinking.
I know, I could see
because
that.
I know you were staring at me.
Exactly.
It couldn't have been Judi Dench's husband if we saw this only a few years ago, right?
He passed away many years ago.
Yeah, well, okay. Nonetheless, we were sitting one row ahead of Judi Dench. Dame Judi Dench.
God, we've spoken a lot today.
I know.
I think we better say bye.
We better say bye. Thanking everyone one more time for downloading us, for recommending us to friends, for listening to this podcast, no matter where you're sitting. We feel a connection with you only because we see the love in our analytics. Thank you very much. You know where to
find us, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platforms. I've learned that phrase by heart now.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means, but it's your favorite podcast platform.
Platforms or apps, Now, if I asked you what those platforms are, you might hesitate.
Yeah.
Yes. But we'll see you on the next episode very soon.
Till next time. Bye-bye now.
Bye.